Been a vocal supporter of Boris Johnson in the past. Is that still the case this morning?
Oh yes, I absolutely support the Prime Minister, and I think he's doing a good job. And it's great to be here on College Green, but with aeroplanes flying overhead and Westminster Abbey having the bells ringing, it's quite noisy down here. So, I have absolute support for the Prime Minister. I think he's doing a great job.
You loud and clear, so don't worry too much about that. Will you first of all tell me what your take is on the motives of the two cabinet members who resigned last night, quite dramatically? Very few people saw that coming. And why now, Peter?
Well, I don't know why now. I do know that it was coordinated because people have said that they knew the resignations were coming. But the question I suppose I would put to both those ex-cabinet ministers was, in the last 2.5 years, Boris has got Brexit done, his first COVID vaccination, which has helped billions of people across the world, lowest unemployment for 50 years. We're stopping the illegal migration of people from Europe. He's led Europe's response to the terrible, terrible war in Ukraine, and today we have the largest tax cut in decades. I'd ask those two gentlemen who resigned, which bit of those Conservative policies did you disagree with? How would you have handled it differently? And I don't think there's a single person in the Conservative Party would have got all those things done so successfully. And that's in the first 2.5 years of his premiership. So another 2.5 years, we should be sailing high. So I do think that the reasons for resignations are not clear to me. They're certainly not policy decisions as far as I can see, so I'm not sure why they've gone.
Jacob Rees-Mogg has said, which is of course the Minister for Brexit Opportunities, has said that, quote, the Prime Minister has won a mandate from the British people and that is more powerful than cabinet members resigning. That's obviously something you agree with based on what you just said. However, isn't it the case that actually the Conservative Party won a mandate from the British people? It wasn't Boris Johnson on the ballot paper, and if the Conservative Party don't think he's delivering for them, then surely it's right that they get rid of him.
Well, first of all, I do think Boris had a huge part of our success. We had a huge majority, our biggest majority since Mrs Thatcher, and that was down largely to his personality. And in fact, he got people in the north and the south and the west and the east all to vote Conservative. I mean, he built a huge coalition. And I do agree with Jacob that we shouldn't remove prime ministers. It should be the British people decide who they want to lead the country. And I remember the last time this happened was Mrs Thatcher, wasn't it? And they forced Mrs Thatcher out, and my goodness, didn't the country regret that and the Conservative Party for years afterwards? So I do think that we should carry on in government, deliver a Conservative policy, and let the electors in due course decide whether they want Boris and the Conservatives or Keir Starmer and Labour.
Peter, just one last question before you go. I don't think the British public take kindly, actually, to leaders who they have elected resigning under immense pressure from their governments. How do you think this will play out for the rest of the day with the fact that the British public do still believe we live in a democracy and they would like to have a say in these sorts of huge decisions?
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that. I mean, I expect there'll be a few more ministers to resign. Remember, I think there are about 130 people in government, and so far a handful have resigned. But I do think we've got an excellent new Chancellor who believes in cutting taxes, and that's for the benefit of the country. And I know Steve Barclay will be a really successful health secretary. So actually, you could argue that these circumstances, actually the government's been strengthened.